I got this package in the mail the other day. My friends over at Lockbee sent me this package. And no, this video is not sponsored. This is not a paid promotion. The folks over at Lockbee are just good people, and they sent this to me as a gift in order to help make this video possible. I had this idea a few weeks ago when I was scrolling through YouTube. So I was looking at a bunch of these videos and there was several, there's a ton of videos out there with, field notes or that type of book. And as I was looking through and watching and looking for ideas and thinking about things, it occurred to me that not a lot of people, at least not a lot of people that make videos about it, use notebooks that are lined. And I thought to myself, why is this? Is there something that I'm missing? Is there something that is better? Is there a type of, I've only ever known lined notebooks. That's the only thing I've ever known. And then as I've gotten more into this sort of pocket notebook space, I learned that there's a very popular alternative to lines, and that very popular alternative is dots. And so in doing a lot of thinking and brainstorming, I thought to myself, why dots? What makes dots so special? And so, as a result of that question, today I'm going to be comparing dots versus lines. So I've never actually used one of these dotted notebooks before. The only time I had ever actually used one was fairly recently. It was when Lockbee sent me this pocket journal, and it actually came with one of these dot grid notebooks that Maddie and I are currently using as our grocery list. Very, very good for that, by the way. It's great for listing, and that kind of takes us into the first part of this, where, dots essentially, the way line as a concept works, these dots make up a line, right? You connect them and they're a line. And really, you could fool your eye into thinking they're lines. They could be horizontal, they could be vertical, and they could even be diagonal if you choose to see it that way. And now I'm not testing the quality of the paper, because as you could just see by the eye test, this was more of a blue, this is more of a yellow. They are very different qualities of paper. Which is better for writing or drawing or anything of that nature? Which is better just for a pocket notebook general use case? So let's start with what I'm comfortable with and what I've used before a lot, going back to kindergarten, the lines. So the lined notebook, it's very structured. You've got your lines. You write left to right in a line, just like this, and you keep it within the lines, right? That's the goal. That's what you are meant to do. From a writer's perspective, this is phenomenal. This is great. It's perfect. It couldn't be any better. But say, for example, if I'm drawing, something like this is obviously it's good enough, but it's not always ideal. I've seen a lot of stuff on the internet about people using dot grids specifically for their drawing purposes, which I think is really cool, because you have the, like I said, the implied lines if you need it that way, but you also have a blank canvas, because you can use this as a lined thing and you could write in lines just like you normally would with a lined book, but you could also broaden your horizons, and you don't have, the thing is, you can totally draw on lined paper. It's just, you have the ugly lines in the way. When your drawing is complete, you've got lines. And I was doing some stuff, making some plans and whatnot, and there's all these very harsh horizontal blue lines. It's kind of ugly. Not ugly, but it is kind of ugly, let's be honest. But with the dotted notebook, you kind of don't have that as much, because on the camera, at least on the preview that I'm looking at, it's really hard to see the dots at all. Obviously, if we get closer to the camera, it's a little easier to see because they're a light gray. They're not blue. Regardless, I personally, in my own usage of this stuff, I don't really care, right? The lines, the dots, it's all the same to me personally. So what I'm going to do is kind of the pen video, this one right here, where I ranked all the pens. I actually have it. So it's this right here where I kind of wrote a little bit with each pen, but this time I'm going to be doing different tests with the same pen, being this pen. The thing I really like about the lined papers, though, is that you've got this header space up top. I really like that because you get it makes for a harmonious writing organization, if that makes sense. To me, it's very clear. You have do list, and then you have your list. Like you have your header, very clear, and then the rest, the contents, right? It's a nice feature. And also I have this space up here to put my page numbers like I always do. If you've seen this video here, the rituals, that's one of my rituals. So I number all the pages. You have this little corner, actually. I didn't notice this, but you do have this little corner where you have that little bit of space to where you could go page 1, which it works. I mean, it writes. Now I want to see how the ink looks on there. It looks quite nice, actually. I like the quality of this paper. It's a little bit thicker. The problem I have with all of these types of books, you've got this book lined. The paper quality, admittedly, is not the greatest, but 160 pages for like 37 cents, this book was. Now, we factor in cost of like the ribbon for the bookmark, as seen in this video. You factor in the lamination with the packing tape and the label and everything. It gets a little higher, but you get from Walmart a pack of these. You get 3 of them for $1. You cannot beat that. You can't. I've looked everywhere. You can't. And if you can, great. I just haven't found it. But everywhere that I've looked, this per notebook is the best bang for your buck. With all of that said, that's awesome. Objectively, the quality of this paper is superior. It's thicker. It's more rich. And even the writing looks good. Like it's just clean. But there's only like 72 pages, so that's 36 sheets of paper. So let's start out. I'm going to start with the dots because I'm curious. I've written in the dots before, like I said, with the grocery list, but this is going to be like the official test, right? Okay, so there we go. We've got our alphabet written out. Looks pretty solid. I'm not going to lie. My thing with the dots, personally, as I'm seeing right now, we're seeing live on the video. For me, the way I write, it's actually helpful to have lines because it keeps my writing straight. Whereas with this, I kind of like if I'm writing on a blank piece of paper, I will write, and eventually I'll trail off. And so my writing ends up not being straight to where it's easy to read. And with that, the dots have a similar effect for me where, yes, they form that implied line, but it's still, I can feel myself start to trail off a hair. But I will say, the dots are closer together than these lines are. These lines are college ruled, which is like a smaller space than like a regular wide ruled notebook. These are even closer than that, which I like. So these are 1/2 centimeter apart or 3/16 of an inch, 3/5 of a centimeter or 1/4 inch. So there's the alphabet, and comparing them side by side, I mean, it's kind of a rough test, but still, this side I believe to be neater. I think there is something to be said about writing with a bigger line because like if I write wide ruled paper, which is like even wider than the college ruled, if I write with wide ruled paper, it's a horrendous mess, disgusting, it's messy, it's terrible. So the narrower the line for me, we're looking at neater handwriting, generally speaking. I feel like these dotted books would be really good for planning a build, something that requires geometric proportions. Like I'm doing these little drawings and these little measurements and stuff. You know, this video is in the back of my head, of course. And what I'm thinking of is like, this would be a great thing to put in my grid notebook. Because, you know, you can see the lines, right? You can see the lines, the blue lines that are on the paper, but like, you don't want to put them on there always. And it's also nice because like with the lines, you don't have a straight line going down, but you do have a straight line going across. Whereas with the grid, you have a straight line going across and a straight line going down. So you can like meet these dots and make it look real pretty and stuff. You know what I'm saying? And then you can like go diagonal and do all sorts of fun things with it. Now, in terms of like journaling and writing, I feel like when it comes to writing, it's the lines all day long for me because it's an easy way. It's a good way to conserve space, especially if you have a notebook that has fewer pages. The lines are a great way to conserve your space because, you know, you can write, I think I did the math. It's like 3 to 7 words per line. I did that in this video up here if you want to check it out. Whereas the dots, I mean, you can do that and you can treat those as their lines. But for me personally, in my own subjective opinion, is that for me, with writing words, written word, lines are easier to deal with. Now, if I'm, again, trying to draw something, make a sketch of something, having these dots is extremely helpful. Let me find something I can draw. The glue stick from last week's video. Like, I can use the dots, but at the same time, I can kind of stray away from them, and then I can like sort of use them as a point of reference. Not necessarily having a hard line, but we have this point of reference to where I can easily kind of guide myself and not be so bound to write or draw within a certain parameter. You have these dots, yes, but you can easily break them. Whereas the lines, to me, I feel like they're a little bit more harsh, so it's harder to break such a thing. So there's our glue. Beautiful. Look at it. It's exactly the same. It's gorgeous. I'm actually going to draw the binder clip in my lined notebook here. Okay, so there's our binder clip. I was just referencing that. got a little carried away with it because that took us several minutes. Either way, this is good, but I felt myself like trying to guide with these lines. Guiding a drawing specifically with lines is much more difficult than it is with dots. Now, granted, I think that turned out pretty sweet. I think the big thing with this kind of thing, with dots versus lines, ultimately, you do what you feel most comfortable with. You know, like I personally have always used lined notebooks, and lots of people prefer dots. And it's one of those things, like, you can compare and you could do all these things. What you ultimately end up with as your solution is there's obvious little things like this certain thing is better than this certain thing, and this certain thing is better than this certain thing for certain applications. But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. It's all personal preference, right? And that's the main thing. That's the main message, I guess, is this is up to you. I have thought about how I could potentially implement a dotted notebook into the notebooks that I use. I've got literally dozens of these exact books on my bookshelf right this moment, and I'm going to be using those forever. These are going to be my books because there's 3 for $1. I cannot stress this enough. These are the best bang for your buck that I know of. So with that, the lines are a permanent staple in my notebook arsenal. However, with the recent researching, with the reflection, what I've done over the past few weeks, and what ideas that I've had, I've decided that I'm going to use my new dot grid for any sort of builds or plan. And it's going to stay at my desk. It's not coming with me. This is the everyday carry forever and always. But this dot grid is going to stay at my desk. My new dot grid notebook will have a home in my studio, and it will be my build book. That's a good name for it, I think. It will be my build book. You know, I want to put up a shelf. How do I want to do it? We rent, so I can't just screw it into the wall. Let's come up with a plan for that. How are we going to do it? Let's put it in the build book. To wrap this whole thing up, dots versus lines, great question. At the end of the day, it's up to you. You could use one, you could use the other, you could use both. A lifetime line user is officially making the transition to not only line, but dots as well. I'm looking forward to using my new build book as a hub for all my future plans for setting up my studio exactly the way I want it. Which is better? Dots or lines? That's up to you. Let me know what you think in the comments. Thank you again to my friends at Lockbee for sending this to me. And thanks to you guys, my friends on YouTube, for watching.